I'm going to welcome you here tonight to our second collaboration between MASS and CUBE this year. MASS, the Metropolitan Architecture Student Society, and CUBE, the Centre for Urban and Built Ecologies. And our first event was the Art of Architecture film screening and Q&A a few weeks ago, very successful. And tonight we are welcoming Kevin Kimwelle from Kenya, who is here to kick off the MASS lecture series, which will continue next term. I'm not going to say very much about Kevin, who will introduce himself, but what I would like to say is that he's here funded by the British Council as part of the UK Kenya season 2025, for which we at CUBE have collaborated with the Africa Centre to deliver two events in our Afropolitan series. The first was on the 29th of October, called Afropolitan Ecologies, and the second is called Fashioning Afropolitan Kenya, and that will take place on the 20th of November, and you're all very welcome. Register via Eventbrite. Okay, so that's the introduction. I want to say thank you also to Harry Grant and the other members of MASS who've made this possible, to our wonderful audience who are here tonight, and to the London Met University for hosting us. All right, I'm going to hand over to Kevin.
All right, so my name is Kevin Kimwelle. I'm a community architect and researcher and project manager. There is a discrepancy between in the green agenda, and in the sense that the green agenda in the African context seems to marginalize poor communities. And the question on the power of alternative architecture is the quest to kind of bridge that space between mainstream architecture and by creating an alternative in which design and architecture can meet and bridge the green agenda. So I'm going to take you through several works that I've done in the past, and these works are kind of narrations of different interventions in different scales in the communities that I've worked in South Africa. So the work that I do are several precedents of different works that I've done in South Africa that kind of are related to each other, but in very interesting ways. I worked with waste collectors in Port Elizabeth, and this is a story of Kustamoko. Kustamoko is a waste collector whose waste kept being hit by trucks and vehicles, and some friends of ours who had been building him these iterations got tired of rebuilding them. So they thought that maybe they were doing something wrong. The intervention was not working, and the question to us was, were we able to kind of intervene and build him a different vehicle? And what we did is, through a period of about 4 to 6 months, we just kind of tracked Kustamoko to understand him, to understand his business, to understand how he worked, to understand how his business was, essentially. And we were quite surprised by the information that we found. First of all, Kustamoko actually has a family. He's married he had a wife, a daughter, and he had 2 dogs, Lion and Lady. And Kustamoko understood the business of trading with recycled waste very well. He actually knew what to look for in terms of the various materials, the ones that fetched the most money, being brown paper, white paper, and all the way to glass and plastics, etc. So what we did is, by understanding who Kusta was, where he was trading, we were able to then design for him a waste bicycle. And I'm going to play a quick movie just to show how that process was. And so what we did is, because we realized that Kusta was really good at repairing bicycles, and he was also a cobbler, we realized that he was his own asset. And because the trade of the repair of bicycles was something that's very easy to him, we took 2 kiddies' bicycles and we actually used these bicycles to kind of build him a new waistcoat. This waistcoat, the other thing we did is we put his face on this vehicle, and we also gave it an identity. So we had a number plate to the vehicle. The constraints of it was that this vehicle had to work within the township's environment, so it had to fit within 900 millimeters, which is kind of the space within the township. And we tested it with him, and then from that we were able to actually rally up South African brewers who came into the project with the universities and the colleges, and from that we were able to actually also create for him the waist bike, which is kind of what you're seeing now. The waist bike itself is something that so what we did there is, as Costa being part of the co-creation process, we went into a second-hand shop, and I was going to choose a mountain bike with kind of a straight steering and shaped and formed in a way that it could carry load and everything. But Costa wanted this bicycle in particular because it suited him more, and so we went for it. We worked with that bicycle. It was an aluminum bicycle, which made it harder to connect and extend because aluminum bicycles, you need a different kind of welding, so which was a bit of a nightmare. But what we did essentially is the second half of the bicycle is from recycled materials from the motor car industry, and we connected the two, and we were able to give him visibility, which was one of the issues. People could not see Costa, so this vehicle had lights, it had a small battery, and people could see him. But more than that, people could respect and understand that waste collection is actually a trade. Again, we put a number plate on the vehicle so that people could identify him. So we kind of lifted up the value and the perception, and we changed the perception of waste collectors. My friend Mdano from Brazil says waste collectors have the worst superpower because they help us sort out our mess, yet no one acknowledges him. And this project was one of those that we really went out of our way to kind of create this this bicycle. But what's interesting was, because of the success in this intervention, we were able to actually create Port Elizabeth's first recycling depot to the public. So from the bicycle itself, we were able to create Costa a new home, a new studio, so that he could keep the bike, do his recycling, and we're able to extend that project to the rest of the city. For Gogo Selina, who's an old lady, about 80 years old, we were requested to fix a ceiling that was essentially collapsing. Gogo has lived in this structure. The structure was built somewhere in 1954, between 52 and 54. So she's lived her entire life here. And the community leaders were concerned because they thought that the ceiling was essentially collapsing. But when we got there, we realized that the problem was bigger. The roof trusses essentially were rotten, and the entire thing was going to cave on them. Gogo Selina was being raised up by her granddaughter, and this is the space that we're living in. This is where the granddaughter was. They would cook, live, and do everything in here. And when we got into the project, we thought we could just kind of fix the ceiling. But then when we looked at the granddaughter who was raising up Gogo, it just didn't sit right with us. So we thought then we're going to build them a new home. And this is one of those projects your heart jumps over the fence and your body kind of goes through it. And we dragged our sponsors and everyone through this project. And so we started the process of recycling material from the motor car industry. So what you're seeing is essentially collapsible shipping containers on your left. And we took out all the wood in this collapsible shipping containers, laminated them to create these columns and beams. And then the metal frames, there are two types. There was the floor frame, which we used to create the floor of the building. And the skin, the frame that's holding the skin, we put it up to create the walls. This project happened during COVID. So there could only be 5 of us on site. And you can see Google kind of inspecting the building. And once we'd created the structure, then we were able to link the two together, which is what you're seeing now. And I mean, it took us a lot of hours because we could only be 5 people on site. We had to take care of Google in the sense of the whole COVID restrictions, make sure she was not too close to us, etc. And in the end, we ended up restoring the old building because it is an heritage artifact, which is what you're seeing at the back, the fireplace, and we created a new space. And I think the impact of that building on the granddaughter was enormous because when we met her, she was this shy, timid girl at the corner of the room, and by the time we were done with the project, she was this proud, bold girl who was happy to, live with the Google. She had her own space, and in fact, last year, Michelle, her name is Michelle, actually joined the university for her BTech. So her grades, her performance, and everything was going very well. This is a bit of the anatomy of the building, so you can see the regional structure over here. So that's what we found on site, and we created a new foundation, a raft foundation, strip foundation, and then we used the floor, the collapsible shipping container floor. Essentially, the column system is laminated wood, which we did ourselves, and then the skin of the building is the collapsible shipping container. The secret to this building is we also found where the cold storage trucks were, in Port Elizabeth being an industrial city, where the trucks got to die. We went and stripped the foam that's kind of in between the trucks, the refrigeration trucks, and we put that material in this building. So between the outer skin and the inner skin of the building, the OS is actually really good thermal insulation. So we were able to recycle everything in this building. Communities in transition in South Africa are communities that are kind of waiting for the RDP house, or the Mandela house as it's called. It's essentially, it's a free house from government due to the inequality and apartheid process. So every Black South Africa, until a couple of years ago, was entitled to this house. And essentially you got a house with a title deed and everything, which is quite remarkable. But you can imagine the process of building 23 plus million houses it takes a very long time. And communities in transition are these communities in the peri-urban space kind of waiting for these RDP houses to roll in. And they live in very dire spaces, conditions, which is one tap for about 200 households, no electricity, no services. So the request was simple by an NGO to provide a soup kitchen for the kids so that the kids could have soup at least twice a day. And because the NGO was faith-based, they wanted a church in this community. And after a 9-month process of asset-based community mapping processes, we were able to actually understand better the community and understand the structure of the community. And we realized that actually we could do several things with this fund. We created a preschool within a community center, and that community center could have the soup kitchen, which was part of the community, the NGO's ask. But then on Monday to Friday, the preschool and creche would run. But then on weekends, we were able to cater for the youth. So we instigated a boys' brass band and a girls' choir in this very community. And then on weekends, you'd have the women come together for various functions, community functions, political, religious, etc. So this hall was used for multiple purposes. But what's unique about the building is that it's made from the very same material that the community was seeing, the very same material that the community had access to. So we worked with pallets, we worked with boards, and we tracked that material. We realized because the community was staying close to the industrial area, they had access to pallets and from Coca-Cola actually, and they had access to these boards from General Motors. If you think about the carbon footprint of this material, it means that these boards, these iso boards and shutter ply boards were actually coming all the way from Michigan because that's where the plant is. And it means that the pallets were actually coming from Brazil to bring the sugar to South Africa for the Coca-Cola plant. But more than that, it probably also means that these materials were coming from different parts of those nations and being assembled, the pine, etc., etc. So we use exactly the same material to create this building. And what we did is, after a 9-month period, we accelerated the R&D, research, development, and innovation to create new ways of working with it. Because it's a poor quality material, we elevated the building so that it had no contact with the water, and we created a metal apron around the building so that when it rained, the water would splash but hit the apron and go down, and that kept the building dry. The other thing we did is we created a double skin system. So the outer pallets, which is kind of what you're seeing there, and then a polythene bag in between, and then an inner layer of pallets to prevent water from going through the building. We also ensured that the building was highly ventilated, so air goes at the bottom and the top, so there's cross ventilation happening through. And the front facade of the building is essentially made of bottles. And this environment is really, really difficult to live in, the township environment. And essentially what happens on weekends is kind of alcoholism. People abuse alcohol, people drink a lot. And these bottles, what happens is once everybody has had the liquor, they smash the bottle. So there's a culture of kind of just smashing the bottles. On a Monday, there's glass everywhere. And what we did is we used this nuisance material to kind of change the perception of the material. And we created this building whose inside is what you can see. So this is when it's set up for preschool. And the teachers and the kids decided that this is what they were going to do. They will hang their bags on it, so this was absolutely not the intention. But more than that, I think this image is really a good summary of when engineering, architecture, understanding material, understanding culture comes into play. The woman is adorned in Xhosa culture outfit, which has this beadwork. And what we did is, by understanding the patterns of the beadwork and everything, we used the bottles to create a pixel. So those bottles are in that order intentionally. So that we could create this pixel fill and that kind of spoke about this beadwork that the Xhosa people celebrate. So we looked for very specific color bottles, the browns, the shades of yellow and green, and the clear bottles. And this image actually was South Africa's most beautiful objects in 2018, finalist, which was a great fit considering that our mission was kind of to engage community and create social economic impact. And in so doing, in being very meticulous and being very intentional in creating beauty, we also created a shift in how the community perceived material. In fact, out of this project, a lady took on the idea of collecting bottles, and she was able to educate her child from this business. And likewise, because we had worked with the guys who were collecting all this pallet and wood, they were able to grow their businesses. We took them to incubators, and they did very well. For the Alliance Francaise, we worked with the Fête de la Musique portfolio, and all the extra material in terms of the pallets that we got from Coca-Cola, we used that for the festival. In fact, the poster of the festival is a pallet. So our agenda was kind of creating this understanding of recycling and reuse. So right from the beginning, our intention was kind of very strong. And all the furniture during the festival was actually made from pallets. But we also introduced another material, which are paper tubes. Architecture students, architects are very familiar with paper tubes because when you have A0, A1 prints, they usually come in a tube. So we collected these over a period of about, I'd say, 4-6 months. And then we engaged the youth in the community in cutting those tubes and creating these 150 millimeter structures, which is what you're seeing, and that formed the screen, which was the backdrop of this festival. So this is a structure which is about 30 meters by 25 to 30 meters by about 12 to 15 meters high. And this was we had lights with it on it, and this created the main attraction to the festival. And usually people would not believe that this was paper tubes, but when they got to it, they were pretty surprised to find this art. For the VNA project, this is a very ambitious project. So remember when we started with Kusta, this is at the township space. This is outside of the city. And then we've moved to the peri-urban through Gogoselina and just Level Community Project. And the critique was that the architecture that we were presenting was for poor and marginalized communities. And then we've created a festival, we've participated in a festival, and we're creating a shift in the way people think about this material within the city, because Fête de la Musique was right in the middle of the city. For the VNA project, this project is placed in a very interesting place that challenges the status quo, because the VNA is the most expensive site in Africa, and probably the fifth most expensive site in the world. This is because the site is on a reclaimed site. The entire waterfront is actually reclaimed land. And the kind of institutions and companies that are based here are super, it's like, it's let's just say the project actually challenges the status quo. So we were very surprised to find ourselves kind of in this space when we got the invitation. What we did with this project is we used all the skills that we'd learned in working in our social, in the township essentially. So using soft skills, using social skills to actually map this project. What we did is we mapped the entire precinct. We understood where the material was coming from. And because the challenge of the project was to create a net zero building. And this net zero building, actually, the difference with it is it's net zero to landfill, to zero waste coming out of the building going to landfill, and embodied carbon and embodied energy level 3, which is the highest in our South African context. We had to adopt a template from Australia for this project. And together with the Green Building Council of South Africa, we realized right at the beginning that we could not bring in new material, because the whole game of net zero buildings is essentially to ensure that your carbon footprint and energy footprint is very low. So by mapping the precinct, we were able to find out where we could get all our materials. And we then, by further marking this precinct, we could figure out what materials were coming from different places. For example, the RC bars, the concrete bar, the bricks, etc., etc. And those materials would be in the windows and doors and everything. We created an inventory. We made it super simple for anyone to work with, especially because we were working with informal. The muscle of this project was actually the informal community. And what I did is I went into the township spaces and of Khayelitsha and Langa. These are townships in Cape Town, and I trained workers to come. I trained a team to come and work with us. And that's a bit of an inventory of the material. This is a bit of the design. So for a year, all we did was collect waste material. And then within that year and the second year, we had to submit a design. And the first design actually got thrown out from council simply because there was just so much recycled material, and they were struggling to understand how this building would stand. And we realized very quickly that the greatest challenge was kind of proving that this building would not catch fire, which was an irony because any conventional building will catch fire anyway. And after a second set of plans, we understood the weak point, and we created a firebox, which is kind of where the kitchen is, to contain all the fire, and then we left everything else open. So that's the roof, the mezzanine floor. That's the roof of the building. That's a section of the building. And we were not shy to pump the project with all the knowledge that we had learned from all the previous projects. So these are very simple renders, and it was very intentional that we used these very simple renders because we had to communicate what the intention was with the team that we were working with, and we realized this very simple renders actually communicated our ideas right across from the team that we were working with to the client, to the contractors and professional consultant team, and to the public. And we kind of showed them where the different components were going in. Then we began the process of recycling the material. So the brick was easy to deal with because essentially we'd pull that out of the various demolition sites. But the two materials we wanted to tackle were actually concrete, brick, and gypsum, the three materials. And we found a way of crushing. We would have the contractors crush the demolition works. Contractors at the demolition works crush the concrete to that size. Then we'd bring it to site and kind of grade it down. And instead of using virgin sand, we tried to use crushed glass. And in fact, we found different ways and different mixes of different strengths of concrete, starting with, in this case, the lowest MPa that we needed was 14 MPa. So we found we could work with 14 MPa, 25 MPa, and I think the highest we needed was 32 MPa, but we could, this concrete, we could produce a 45 MPa concrete. And we also found different ways. Yeah, the crushing strength, yeah, of this concrete, so that we could create the slabs and the floors of the building, which was evidence, essentially. So this is where the lab work was really massive. So what we would do is we tested the material at the university laboratories, and once we were sure of it, we would create, during construction, we had to get those same cubes and send them to the industrial concrete crushers so that they could send the audited figures back for the client. And then with gypsum boards, this gypsum boards are a total menace for any city, because what happens is anywhere that gypsum boards are placed, nothing grows. Gypsum is essentially dead cement, and it kind of seals everything underneath it. In fact, a lot of landfills avoid having gypsum boards in them because it kind of just creates a bubble. Nothing can breathe from it. And essentially what we did is we found a way of removing the paper from the gypsum board by soaking the paper, soaking the boards. And then it's a laborious process. You know, it would take about a week to 2 weeks to eventually get the gypsum in its pure form out of, its pure form, and get the paper out of it. And then we found ways of using the plasterwork from gypsum board with adding lime and cement to create different textures, which is kind of what you're seeing here. And depending on the property we wanted, you know, did we want it to be waterproof? Did we want it to be arty and expressive, or did we want it inside or outside? So we found different mixes to go in. Anyway, then in this project what we did is there was an existing garden, but we started looking at how that garden could provide food for the cafeteria. So the design of this building is essentially a cafeteria. And this is where we're looking at circularity in its full and its completeness. So food, obviously you cannot go food for an entire cafeteria over there, but the gesture of actually growing the spices and some of the food there was a good thing. And now you can start seeing the final renders of the building. So this is kind of the entrance, a bit of the, again, the whole building is passive design. All the work that we do is passive design, meaning those are like the first principles of design. So thinking about lifting up buildings, cooling the building, natural ventilation, natural lighting. As I said, we were not shy to pump this building with all the knowledge that we had accumulated over the years. You can see the paper tube that we had screen that we had devised for the Fatela music. This time it's on a horizontal it's lying flat, and the reason for that is because we opened up the roof of the building and daylight, natural light would come in. But in Africa, natural light could be a lot. The sun can be pretty hot. So we needed to create a screen to filter that light, and that's what the paper tube was doing, which is what you can see there. We played with the one bottle wall more. We introduced all these lights and every fitting that you're seeing there. Essentially, we modeled all the building parts that were recycled on Revit, and we worked with our engineers through BIM. Everyone kind of could come together and figure out what they needed to do. We could get the view values, etc., etc. And this is the final product of that building. Even in the interior decoration of the building, nothing was new. So all the furniture that you're seeing there is old, repurposed furniture, either reupholstered. The interior design, we got an interior designer who's really good at that. So the ethos of the idea of recycling the building, both recycling essentially, was really, really high. So you can see now the cafeteria it's in function. This was opened in this year, 25th of July. The place started running. And as a result of that dialogue, so remember we've started in the township, we've moved to the peri-urban, and now we've moved into the CBD. And we're now working with very commercial buildings, showing how social skills in architecture are actually the way to leverage and create greener buildings and much more impactful buildings, create social economic impact. And as a result, I found myself actually in the panel of the Green Building Council. This is the 2022 convention, speaking about this architecture. In a way, I felt like I was advocating and speaking of an architecture that is seen as inferior. It's not part of mainstream architecture, but has so much potential in actually shifting the course of architecture in Africa. And that building was actually nominated for Comstrat 2024, even before it was completed. And there was only 3 buildings in Africa that were nominated for that. Comstrat is essentially a nomination process. We don't know who nominated us for this, and which was really great. We also found ourselves at the COP27 in Egypt, and we spoke of social justice. We found ourselves giving voice to a large population in Africa that usually is never featured in this kind of spaces. So this is this is pretty much an activist space that we enter. So alternative architecture is not just about buildings, and it's not just about societal issues on an urban kind of space kind of thing. It can also speak of other issues of injustice and social inequalities, etc., etc. And besides speaking to TEDx, this here is a cartoon that I think I will complete with. This was put together by the South African Cities Network, and they used our work to show best practice for the province of Eastern Cape Province in South Africa. So they kind of put my story together. I used to have a beanie and long hair once upon a time, which I kind of ended up getting rid of because it was very hard to maintain that in a construction site. So this is my story according to the South African Cities Network as best practice example for my province. And essentially, it's the idea of co-creation, collaboration, and engaging the entire city. So, that's the settlements in Port Elizabeth. You can see where the university is, and engaging the development agency and the municipality in dialogue and asking questions. So not providing solutions, which is something that is very difficult for architects to do. Anytime there's a problem, architects rock up with all their pencils and everything with all these amazing grand solutions. Whereas actually, I think what is needed is a bit more care and listening and being able to co-create and being able to give the pencil or the drawing pen to others to contribute to that process. And by bringing people together and understanding that they were all part of the team and they all bring a certain asset to the project, we were able to create these projects. You can see the Just Lover Community Project over there. You can see the recycling project, which ended up creating the first depot with Kusta Mokum. You can see Gogo Selina's project, amongst others. And I think in conclusion, I mean, I say this with a lot of humility. I think because of the thoroughness of the work that we did and the engagement with students, students and academic institutions, we're able to do R&D and really think about and rethink our work in the context of the communities that we were serving, and the real thinking and the steering of how to impact these communities. And this work, surprisingly, has actually won several coveted awards, both in South Africa and internationally. And I say that in humility because it puts it back, ironically, into the mainstream space, because that's what we are trying to speak to, by showing that it's actually possible to do very low-tech buildings, very simple buildings that have an equal, if not more, amount of integrity and amount of development of technology and understanding of the communities that they're in, to produce good architecture. Good architecture is not just about glass, aluminium, steel, etc. Good architecture could come from waste material, in our case, or construction and demolition waste. And considering that Africa is considered to be where a lot of the future development will be happening. Yesterday I actually had some very interesting facts, something close to 80% of the construction from 2030 onwards will actually be happening in Africa. So we need to rethink the materials, we need to rethink the practice, we need to rethink how to impact the communities around these areas so that we can uplift them in our development. And I think that's kind of the role of alternative architecture, or alternative thinking, or alternative development. It's rethinking architecture as a machine that is continuously moving in a certain direction, but while you're doing that, rethinking the very small parts of it, in terms of construction, in terms of materials, in terms of social economic impact to communities that are around, in terms of circularity, etc. And by so doing, we are able to shift the mainstream architecture to move favorably with a bit of a African tweak to it. Yeah. Thank you very much. Actually, what we discovered was, and that's kind of a problem with standardization and detailing in mainstream architecture. We want it perfect, and yet if you look at crafted buildings, old crafted buildings, they're actually beautiful because of their imperfections. You know, we're not trying to create glass skyscrapers or high-end buildings. We really trying to create buildings that serve the community in a different way. And especially if you're thinking about homes, considering that a lot of these communities are living in really bad conditions, yet a bit of with a few skill sets, you could uplift that entire community. So I think there's a lot of tolerance in the work we do, not just of the material, but definitely of the material. We embrace the bricks being imperfect, the wood being imperfect, and we allow for a lot of acceptance of imperfections that we see contributing to the eventual beauty. However, we also have a lot of tolerance in terms of providing the space for others to learn with us. The profession of architecture is very much about accuracy to the millimeter, and it's difficult for you to attain that with a bunch of people you've kind of brought in together from different walks of life to suddenly be able to, So for that reason, we are aware of that fact, and we see how that plays off in the architecture we produce. So the buildings end up being kind of, at times they feel unfinished, but not unintentionally, because we look for textures and surfaces that speak in a certain way. Yet we still have to have certain accuracies and precisions. For example, with the steelwork, with the one bottle wall, we realized that the tolerance of the expansion between the bottle and the shutter ply had to be about 1.5 millimeter, so it had to be that way, and we had to fill that in with silicone, which was the only material that could allow the shutter ply to contract and expand, because if it rained, so we learned that the hard way, because and we put that, some of those samples, we put them out with 2 full samples of about 1/2 meter by 1/2 meter into the pool to see what would happen, and then we pulled them out, and sure enough, when you put it in the sun, the wood would first stretch and then contract and to break the bottles. So it took a while to find the right precision for that. And it's not just with the glass bottle wall, it's with the RC bars, it's with the steel connections, with the door connections, where you really have to make proper seals for the windows and the doors. So there is a level of precision, but as we moved to those areas, then we worked with kind of experts. You had to work with a welder, a really good carpenter, etc. But a majority, if you look at where to engage with the community, it's in like the demolition works. Sorting out, because with contractors, essentially they pull down a building as quickly as possible, because it's not a paid job, it's a high-risk job, etc. Yet we were able to get our team to go in and pull out the doors and the windows and all that reasonably, so that we could be able to reuse them. So there's a bit of a play in understanding what tolerance in which area, and then we think about that tolerance in terms of the final manifestation, in terms of the architecture, in a way that it's complementary.